hanging out in the bush with some friends. We'd found a dirt road off the highway and went exploring. After a few kilometers of bushland, it ended at a small dock on a river. Seemed like a nice place to chill, listening to music, laughing at stuff. The light was starting to dim, and we figured on leaving before it was too dark to drive on the dirt road. As we pull off the dock, we all notice a guy leaning against a tree, casually swinging an axe against the heel of his shoes. No idea how long he'd been there watching us. Went on an ATV ride in Arizona with some friends and found an old mine. We go exploring, and all of a sudden some big stereotypical miner-looking guy comes out. Holy shit. Turns out it was his claim that he was rebooting. Nice guy. I was walking out at night for some exercise. There was a guy no more than 15 feet from me from behind. He followed me for maybe 20 minutes. I turned and was like, "The f*** is wrong with you?" And he was like, "What? I'm on a nightly stroll to lose weight." I guess he was telling the truth since I never saw him again, or he got really good at hiding now. This is a different kind of scary, and one that only might apply to me, but over a year ago I was heavy into recreational party enhancers, let's call them. That changed after one night. I went to a costume party and engaged in some of those party favors. At some point, my roommates leave without me, and as the night goes on, I realize that I won't be able to go home because I missed the last train home. But I'm fine, because I know some people there, and I'm buzzing, so I'll probably be up on Red Bull for the rest of the night. At some point, hours later, I realized that my better judgment left with my roommates, and I drank too much Red Bull, and I suddenly realized that something was terribly off with the whole situation. I was sitting there, as one drunk friend was telling me not to trust anyone, before she jumps up and vomits all over the hall. And now I'm trapped in this room until she can get out of the hall. And I realize that I'm trapped in the house until 6 a.m. Suddenly, everything becomes super familiar as the song Teardrop by Massive Attack comes on, and I'm suddenly on the set of some 70s style alien infomercial for why you shouldn't partake in recreational party favors. Room pans out a little behind me, and I'm looking at the room in third person. I freak, not properly comprehending what's going on in the room, and stressed by the music. So I hop up and pull out my phone, which has suddenly decided that this is the song it's going to play, despite not being on my playlist. No one reacts, but a friend comes up to me in 70s style lapels, adding to the paranoia, and asks if anything is wrong with this situation. I freak and run out of the room, over the girl in the hall, and go downstairs into the kitchen in full panic attack mode. Not doing well, freaking out, trying to call a taxi I can't afford because all I can think about is the safety of home and to get out of this nightmare. Friend, who's a bit of a guide in this whole experience and actually lives here, offers me a blue pill. I freak. I've been exposed to the Matrix. Shit. I'm literally shitting myself and on the verge of a heart attack. Doesn't go well trying to call a taxi as my effed up phone stops working. Frozen, no matter what I do. Basically, just wait until the train starts up again, shitting myself. I eventually leave the house, at which point I realize the deja vu is following me, and the entire path from the house to the train and all the way home, including the people on the platform and the people on the train, are part of the organized simulation. The farther I get away from that house, the worse it gets. Think like a cosmic Truman Show. Everything is planned, and I have literally no control over my actions. Even they are scripted. It stops after I get off at my station. Feel like shit, but I'm alive and okay. I'm shook up the first night, and don't sleep. But eventually the panic of panic fades, and I feel better. 2 weeks later, I get a parcel from the friend who was throwing the party, one that I had forgotten there. Have a smoke, and suddenly, I'm back in the Matrix. DR, had a massive freakout and nearly went full psycho. About 3 months ago, me and my brother were home alone because our parents were at work, and we got a phone call. Now normally, it would be our parents calling to check if we're okay, but we got a phone call from somebody we didn't know. My brother picked it up, saying the usual, "Hello?" Then he called me and told me to listen to the phone. As I was listening, I could hear a faint breathing sound down the other side of the phone, and then I heard a scream. After that, I started to question who was there, and all I heard was, "Soon." And then the phone call finished. I was instantly creeped out, and I told my brother to lock all of the doors and go play. About 3 months later, nothing has happened, but it's still creepy nonetheless. I was in Namibia, southwestern Africa, doing wildlife research. I had to help a veterinarian sedate and anesthetize cheetahs for health exams. We were in a 10 by 10 foot room with the caged cheetah. Once we darted him, we pulled him out of the cage and smacked the hind quarters to make sure he was sedate. Nothing happened. We began to lift the cheetah onto a cloth sling so we could transport him to an exam table. At that moment, the cheetah jumped up, growling and hissing. We all stepped back as far as we could, and the cheetah stood there, ataxic, drunk-like, and growling. He was staring straight at us. Luckily, he didn't lunge and fell back asleep. The veterinarian gave another dose of anesthetic. He then said, "If that were any panther species, lion, tiger, leopard, or jaguar, it wouldn't have hesitated to kill us." It was amazing. I'm a server at a seedy dive bar that was the primary hangout for a group of shady Bosnian men. Most of my coworkers are afraid of them, so we always have a really hard time trying to get them to leave at 2 a.m. A couple of them are actually pretty decent dudes and don't cause problems, as long as there is a mutual respect. I have, on an occasion, hung out, played pool, and drank with said people after a shift or on my day off, and there was never any indication that I should be worried about those specific guys. About 2 months ago, on a painfully slow Saturday night, I was waiting on a few of them who I didn't know very well, and they were the only people in the bar for a majority of my shift. They love taking shots of Jaeger and will buy rounds for whoever is there, especially if you're female. Well, in this particular night, I was, as usual, having a difficult time trying to get them to leave at closing time. They kept asking me if I needed a ride home, and said they'd wait for however long until I was done to do so. I declined. We did that whole dance for about 10 minutes, then finally, they promised they would bounce if I took one shot with them. So I went against my better judgment and had one, even though I didn't see the shot poured or where it came from. Stupidest decision I've ever made. Within a matter of minutes, I was on my ass. Can't remember a damn thing and can only go by what my coworkers told me had happened. The head bartender, a somewhat intimidating crazy Irish F, told them to kick rocks so I could finish up, then found me passing in and out of consciousness in the service station. He was effing livid because he thought I had been drinking the whole night, put me in a car, and got me home safely. My boyfriend, who is a bartender at a different place downtown, came home several hours later and could not wake me up until 7 p.m. the next day. Needless to say, I was drugged, but the disaster was completely averted, all thanks to the Irishman. My manager gave me the chance to explain myself, and I did not end up getting into any trouble, but we were all incredibly freaked out and began to piece things together, ultimately realizing that this was not the first time they had something like this there. But in those other instances, it has always just seemed like the victim had gotten too drunk on their own. My manager banned them indefinitely, but it didn't matter because we never saw those same Bosnians in there again, up until last Tuesday. I was not working that night, but apparently some out-of-towner. I should note that this bar is located just off the highway and surrounded by various hotels, so we get a lot of drifters. Was playing pool with one of them. There was an altercation over one thing or another, and he ended up getting jumped later that same night while walking back to his hotel after leaving our bar. His body and his car were found in the parking lot of the local zoo, riddled with bullet holes. My manager is so distraught over this, and I believe she takes a look at the blame on herself, as do the bartenders who were working that day, because there are a good amount of them who come in. I wasn't sure that the aggressor had anything to do with what happened to me months prior, but yesterday, my manager had me look at a mugshot online from our county's inmate lockup, and I'm 100% the man in question was there the night I was drugged. I just kept thinking about what could have happened to me if it weren't for my beloved coworkers. Alright, not sure if this counts as in real life, because dream. It started with me in a game called Roblox. Something fell over, so I said, thanks, silence. Everything goes dark. Like I closed my eyes, there's a tingling feeling across my forehead, and my ears felt like they were popping repeatedly. There's a voice in my head, thank us, save us, and a figure appearing to get closer. Then I woke up. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw the figure a little closer. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep last night. In June 2008, me and my friends went camping. We almost went camping every week for the weekend. Anyways, this one weekend started out weird. Normally, there were deer about, and other animals like rabbits, birds, etc. Nope, not this time. Anyway, the sun was setting, the campfire was lit, and everyone was mostly drunk. Suddenly, one of our friends comes running to us after going for a pee, screaming about something in the woods. At first, we didn't really care, or thought she was lying, until progressively, one by one, everyone saw it. One of my friends wanted to talk away from the group. He suspected they were on drugs, and I kind of agreed with him until he forced me to the ground and said quietly, "Look." I looked up, and about 50 feet away, 2 big red eyes. I opted for running while screaming, so we did. Things calmed down for a few hours. I went to sit down. The fire was too hot for me. Then a friend goes, look ahead. I was face to face with the creature. I could see its head, and the time it looked exactly like the werewolves from Underworld, mixed with Skyrim's werewolf. I shifted back because I noticed I didn't like the fire. At this point, everyone retreated to the tents. One of my friends passed out, alone in a small tent. We watched as the animal walked into the tent, then walked out. We waited out the night and left. 3 of us went back to figure out what the F went on. We found tracks, we took photos of them. They were really big, almost cat-like with claws out. A few weeks later, a zoo 25 miles away reported missing a panther. We didn't believe it because to us it was not a cat-like and was a lot bigger. We never resolved the mystery. I was 16 years old and an only child. It was mid-December, and my parents and me went to our grandparents' house in Massachusetts countryside. Anyway, it was like December 22nd or something close to that, and my parents always wanted me to get into the Christmas spirit and shit like that. They wanted me to come to a lame old people Christmas party with them and my grandparents, but I denied it. I sat on the couch pretty much all night long. I had the house to myself, and I thought I might as well just watch Netflix or play my grandma's old Wii for the night. It was probably like 3:30 or something like that, and out of nowhere, I heard this loud bang at the basement door. It made me jump. This house was old as hell, however, built in like the early 1900s, so I figured it might have been the wind or something like that, rustling a loose piece of wood outside. Just as soon as I finished that thought, I heard a loud smash and a window had been broken. I knew it was the basement door since it had a very large window on it. Anyway, before I could grab a weapon to use against this intruder, the power cut off. It was literally pitch black. I didn't even have my phone. I obviously shit my pants, and I made my way towards my grandma's closet, which was very small, but a great hiding place. I couldn't call the police as there was no cell reception. I was paralyzed with fear as I heard loud footsteps coming up the stairs and stopping directly in front of my grandma's bedroom. The guy let out a menacing scream. It literally scared the hell out of me. It sounded like his vocal cords were slit, and he was trying to scream as loud as he could. He soon walked away from the bedroom, and I heard the front door open, signaling that he was gone. I stayed there for about another hour, until the power came back on. About a month later, I read on the news that just up the road from my grandparents' house address was a really effed up mental hospital for the absolute worst, craziest people in the world. And apparently, one of the patients escaped and broke into my grandparents' house. He had been a formal serial killer before he went insane. To this day, I can't stay easily by myself anywhere at all. My dad and I were watching a movie late one night a few years ago, and as soon as the credits started, we heard someone walking downstairs and stopped at the bottom step. This was normal because most times my brother would wake up and be too scared to open the door. So my dad went to go look, and as soon as he opened the door, there was nothing there and no footsteps going up. We both heard it as well as the cat, so we know we weren't hearing things. My dad then sat back down on the couch and we heard a scream upstairs. We ran up to see what it was, and nothing was there. When I was a kid, my mom, dad, sister, and I lived by my grandmother, whom I frequently visited. In her front room, she had several pictures of the family, being very large, as she had 13 kids, one dying not long after childbirth. It was notorious that my grandmother's house was haunted. There are several stories I could tell, but this story was probably the strangest. Now I was about 7 or 8. I dreamed that my sister and I were in the front room of my grand's house, looking at a picture that I had seen in the house several times before, of a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes, smiling. I didn't know who the boy was, and in the dream, I asked my sister, who replied that his name was Ronnie, and that he was dead. We went home, and for some reason I turned to look at my grand's house, and Ronnie was standing on her porch. We were terrified, of course, and went inside, screaming at our mom about what we saw. Ronnie comes inside and sits with mom at the kitchen table, while I stand in the living room and watch. I remember my mother crying, and Ronnie telling her that they didn't have to worry about him anymore, that he was all right, that he was at peace. I woke up, and seeing the light on in my parents' room, went and told them what I dreamt. When they asked the boy's name and I told them Ronnie, they shared a look that had me on edge. When I asked them about it, they explained to me that I had a cousin, Ronnie, who died in a drunk driving accident not long before I was born. Now, what makes the situation even more strange is that after that, we couldn't find the picture at my grand's house. Even though everyone remembered it hanging on the wall, no one could find it afterwards, no matter how hard we searched. This happened to my family when I was 17. One of my friends dropped me off at my house after school one day, and walking up the steps to my front door, I noticed something strange. There were 4 windows, 2 on the left side of the door and 2 on the right side. The far side left window, the curtains were drawn. This is odd because my mother, nor does my sister, open the curtains in the morning before we leave for school. Not thinking too much of it, I open the door with the key and proceed into the house. I'm immediately in the living room, and I notice the couch has a sweat stain outline of a person. The thought of being alone in the house, because my mom is a teacher and had parent-teacher conferences that night, and my 15-year-old sister was at a dance practice for another hour, scared the shit out of me. I quickly get my phone out and call my friend that had dropped me off and tell him what I found. I waited for him for about 5 minutes before he returned and opened the door slowly. He noticed the sweat stain outline as well. We decided to sweep the house and to check for an intruder still being inside. After checking every closet and any tight spaces for somewhere to hide, we decided safe, and I'm advised to tell my mother what happened. I called her, and she immediately thought I was playing some kind of prank. She told me it could be any number of things, and maybe an animal got into the house and was covered in water, which wasn't too far-fetched because there was a small stream near my house. Anyways, she drops my sister off at home from dance practice, and after about a minute of being in her room, she yells downstairs, "Hey, did Mom do laundry this morning?" "No, I don't think so." "Well, a bunch of my underwear has gone out of my drawer." I immediately got sick and told my sister the situation of what I found earlier. After telling her, we both are now scared shitless and decide to make another desperate attempt to tell Mom. This time, she comes home and investigates for herself and finds out that some of her underwear had been taken as well. The very next day, she buys new locks for the front and back door and has the locks on the windows checked by the landlord. 2 months later, some random Saturday afternoon, and me, Mom, and sister are coming home from getting something to eat. We pull into the driveway to see that both curtains on the left side window were drawn. We all proceed with caution. Me, being the man of the house, I walk into the living room, into the kitchen, and there's a pile of vomit on the linoleum floor and a men's tube sock that was tattered and dirty laying a few feet away. We all check the house, and after we decide it's clear, my mom calls the police, and tell them what we found, and tells them about what I had found coming home a couple of months prior. It didn't appear anything was stolen this time. Cops drove by our house during the daytime for a few weeks but didn't report anything suspicious. Nothing like this ever happened again, and we ended up moving away 2 years later. To this day, I'm 23 now, I still wonder who it was that got into the house, and I deadbolt every door in my apartment.